Thursday, January 6th at 10 a.m. First off on the agenda here is to discuss the interviewing and hiring of zoning administrator, the process. So what prompted this is I got a call from City Hall and they have had, I believe, 5 people apply for the job. And I was told that there were 3 of them that were interesting, and or however you want to say it. And I wanted to come in and just review the applications before the meeting, before we got the 3 of them in here for the interview process, and I cannot do that. I was told I cannot do that, which is a little troubling to me a little bit. I'm on the personnel committee and the mayor, and you can't look at them. But so the purpose of this is I was told that once we do the interviewing, we have to close the application process. Nobody else can come in. So is that what we want to do, the rest of the group here? Do we want to close it at 5 applicants, 3 interested, and do our hiring from that perspective?
Okay, I'd like to know, there are 5 applicants?
That's what I was told.
Have we done and now we're going by staff saying that we're only going to interview 3? Did you do the training and experience rating on them or not? Or I guess I'm wondering why the personnel committee has not seen the applications.
That is why we are here today, is to form a process.
Okay.
In the past,
Can we
practice.
Can we close the meeting and look at the applications then?
Past practice has never been that the personnel committee does any of the hiring.
Then we should maybe close the meeting and look at the applications.
I think we need to set a process first.
In 20 years of hiring people, and I hired a lot of people, I was never allowed to see the application till the day of the interviews, and typically it was about an hour or so before. I sat down, went through the ones that were qualified by staff, and we went through the interviews from there.
Okay, I'm fine with that, but I want to see the training and experience rating form then.
I'm assuming it's in the application, you get to see it at the time.
No, the staff would have done it. How do you decide on who you're interviewing if you don't do the T&E? I know, 40 years, I know.
The T&Es have been done.
Okay, can we see those?
Only 3 had the minimum qualifications.
But is
3
staff deciding what the minimum qualifications are?
The job description decides.
Well, I would
There are
like
minimum qualifications in the job description.
But doesn't the city council have the right to say, okay, we're gonna, I don't know what your point system is it 100 points?
Yes.
Okay, so do we only interview candidates that have 60 points or better? What's your criteria? Because it's the staff that's doing it, it's not the city council. What's your criteria? Where did you add your?
Can I speak?
Well, I just want to know one more thing.
I'm going to answer.
I'm just going to say, did you put points in there? Is there anybody that is a veteran?
That was taken into consideration, yes.
Because they get an extra 10
They
points for that.
absolutely do. That's on the T&E.
Okay, I just don't understand why the city council is not involved in who we decide to interview, and if we have.
Marcia, that is, if you read number 2 on the agenda, discuss the process. We are here to decide what process we're going to use.
Okay, I think the city council should be involved. Okay.
Okay, and my concern with it is that if we go ahead with these interviews now we are closing the application process. And we just got through the holidays, we got through that time frame when we're asking for applicants to come forward, and I'm a little concerned that that window might be a little short, you know?
Dave, the application window has closed. It closed December 14th. It was cut off.
Can we do it again?
But that doesn't mean that if we don't offer the job to anybody, we open up the the application process again.
Right, you can start it over, but
And-
at this point, it's closed.
So if we did the interviews, could we then decide that there is not a candidate good there and we want to reopen the process?
Absolutely.
But the process has to be reopened before that can happen, Dave. You have to go through the interviews, and at this point, it stands at 3. We go through the 3 interviews, and if none of those 3 qualify, then you reopen the process.
Run it again?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was under the impression that it's done. We stop at these 3 and we got to make a decision.
Well, not if we don't decide to hire one of them. If we decide to hire one of them, then it is done.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Obviously, yeah. Okay.
But I think the city council or personnel committee should be deciding on the process, is deciding who we interview, or we interview all of them and they all become public information.
Why would we take the time to interview people that are not qualified?
But we don't know.
Yes, we do. We have staff that's.
But
reviewed it.
all I want to do is see the T&E then.
I think you're making something a lot more complicated than what it needs to be.
I agree with Aaron. The staff has done a T&E that was set up for the application process. I think we shouldn't waste time for people who don't meet the training experience. You've got 3 others. We might like 1 of 2 or 3 or none, but I think we should move on. We've got spring coming up and I don't see any need to putz around.
Yeah, my only concern is prematurely stopping the process. I would almost rather go through another month cycle of looking for more people. I believe, Shar, you said
Except
they
David,
met-
this ended December 14.
Well, we could extend it, right?
I'm not interested in extending it. We've got.
We're running
appears
behind
to be
already.
qualified candidates. Let's move
Well,
on.
how, are they minimum? Are they minimum qualified, or do you have good candidates? I mean, that's what I wanted to look at, is what do we have? What are we looking at?
But the city council doesn't have that option.
Yeah, well, that's,
Seems really strange to me, but I guess if that's how Cross Lake does it, I don't know. I don't think it's
My view
right.
is you can look at T&E when you get the applications and you'll see whether you've got 3 people at 100 or 3 people at 40 or wherever you are. You'll have a chance to look.
Yeah, I think we should be able to look too.
Mr. Schrupp, what are you saying?
Well, I in the past, this is the same process that was used as an example when we hired TJ. I wrote down some notes here, some comments, and you have to keep in mind that we have to provide equal opportunity to all of these people. So what I would recommend that we set up a day to interview all these people. I don't care who they are. It makes sense to not interview the ones that really don't qualify. But I say that all council is involved in the interview process. No single council member is allowed to contact the applicants outside of this interview or past employers. Resumes are passed out at this meeting and they're returned at the end of the meeting. The applicants should be advised to not talk to council and advise us if that happens. And the same group of questions is asked of all members. And in the past, the staff prepared questions that each of us would ask. So we asked the same questions to all the members, not all the applicants, excuse me. And that seemed to be fair. And then at the end of that, at the end of the interview process, we can decide if there's an applicant in there that we'd like to offer the job to.
Okay, well, I mean, that answers my biggest concern, is that the process is not done at these 3. It certainly could be, but it's not. We can reopen it up if
Right.
there is. That was my concern that called for this meeting.
So Dave, you're
Yeah, and if we
saying
had,
interview all of them? Is that what you're
we
saying?
could, I would say that, in the past, the staff has done a good job evaluating those that don't qualify or shouldn't be interviewed. Since there's 5, that's going to make it probably a couple days worth. I would say we should start with the 3, and then if we're not happy with those, then we could look at the 2 that were thrown out, but that doesn't make sense either. I would
Yeah,
say
I
just-
don't, is that true
Yeah.
that the 2 that were excluded did not qualify? Is that true?
What we did was we looked at the T&E and the job description, and those that didn't meet that minimum requirement were set aside.
Yeah, so we've got 3, but I understand we have 3 good applicants that we want to interview.
So that's what I believe. I believe the staff. And I think we should just get going on it right away.
Okay,
Because
so,
if we decide that none of them are what we want, then we gotta, I guess, open up the process again.
I'm assuming that interview
Yes,
process
sure.
is a closed meeting,
No,
public?
Yep.
Open to the public?
yep,
Okay.
once they're finalists, if you decide to interview those 3 people you're talking about, that's public information. The other 2 applicants would remain private, confidential. But once you decide to interview,
Marcia
they're
is-
finalist.
Yeah, Marcia's correct, and when we did, hired TJ, all of the council members sat over at the community center, and we had each applicant come in one at a time, and they got to talk, and we got to ask questions, and then we did have, I don't know, there was like maybe a dozen public people that are involved in the library and the community center that actually sat in the audience and listened, so. That seemed to go well. No one complained. That's my 2 cents worth.
So then when we get done with the interviewing process, then we kind of meet as our group and we decide if we want to keep looking or if we're satisfied and make a motion or, and that's all done in an
Yeah,
open?
we did it at the same meeting.
Yeah, okay.
I think the hard part is trying to set up times for all the people to come. But staff did a pretty good job lining up the people, and if there's only 3, it isn't too bad.
Yeah, I believe we've got 1 from out of state. Is that correct? 1 applicant? Right? So, but yeah, that's just figuring out how to do it. Okay, well, do we make a motion for that or no?
Yes.
Yeah?
Do you want me to read? I can send these comments if you want me to read them again. I can send them to Shar, but you want me to go over it again?
Well, that's pretty typical in interviewing, same questions and all that.
Okay.
I think all we need is a motion that we're gonna interview 3 of the candidates. And then that becomes public information, so we should be able to know who they are. And I would say we should be able to look at their application, the city council, once they become public information. We don't even know who we're interviewing. But once we decide we're interviewing those top 3 candidates, then we can see them.
So you just want to preview them before the interview? Just review them before
They're
the,
public information. At the point that you make a motion and it passes, those 3 candidates, that's public information, and everybody has a right to know who they are. Not just the city council, everybody.
yeah, okay. Well, somebody make a motion in regards to,
I make a motion that we plan to interview the 3 candidates that met the T&E requirements as reviewed by the staff using the criteria suggested by Dave Schrupp.
okay? Second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion on it? All in favor?
I
Aye?
need to
Aye.
do roll call.
Roll call, okay.
Zebra Bowles,
Yes,
Nevin,
Yes,
Herzog,
Yes.
Schrupp,
Yes,
Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, next is discuss interviewing people services for the sewer plant operation. Now, unfortunately, we got the sewer plant guys are kind of fired up. So I'm going to start out with one question is our public works employees, are they all hired as sewer operators?
No.
Yes, they are.
Sewer, they're a heavy equipment sewer operator is their job title.
Sewer operator, heavy equipment.
Yep, so they do both.
Okay. Because my thing with this people services is, and I don't know, I think we got a union rep here too, so I'm kind of a little nervous about what I'm gonna say, because I'll probably get in trouble.
Before you do that, Mr. Nevin, normally what happens is when a group decides to do an outsourcing, the council directs staff to follow that process. My understanding, that's not what happened with this process on how you've done things, so go ahead.
Okay. I just think it's in the best interest of the city to look at the options. And, I got a call about this people services, actually from a guy at the Pine River Watershed District. I mean, that's how I had the contact of it. And since then, Pine River Watershed has hired these people to operate the watershed district. So there's some benefiting areas to,
They did not hire them. It's in the Echo, page 4.
well, they didn't. No. Well, I was told they did.
No,
No?
they voted it down.
Is it pending or it voted down? Oh, that's not the understanding I heard.
Dave, why am I seeing today a contract that has a date on it, June 21st? First time I saw it is today.
Is it a contract?
It sure looks like one to me.
Contract or a proposal? I haven't seen that.
They're the same thing, because that's what you would consider for a contract. So proposal, I'll change it to proposal.
Yeah, I mean, they came up. Ted walked them through. When they walked through the plant, they came back with this is what we think it'll be, I don't think that was a contract.
But it was a contract proposal is what it was.
Well,
Why on January of '22 am I seeing a proposal from June of '21? You've got 7 months in there that I had no clue this was floating around. I don't know, did either one of you know of it? Dave or John?
I did not.
you didn't, Mr. Schrupp, you didn't either?
I have never, today I saw the contract, you had mentioned it to me.
Well, where's the contract? I haven't seen it.
You asked for, it was emailed to us by Troy. And I would just like to make a statement to the employees of Cross Lake, especially the public works people, that the majority of the council members did not know about what was going on here. And we're very sorry that this was done. It doesn't do much for employee morale or attitude to blindside them with something like this. And my big thing is usually you have to sell a council on why you do this or why you'd be interested in doing this. And for at least 20 years, we have operated with the same arrangement with the employees, running the sewer plant when they can. And it's a big job for them. They have to go to training and they're doing a fine job. I don't know why we'd go and spend almost $300,000 hiring somebody else to do it. So why you'd want to do this is the question that I would ask. I don't get it,
Well,
period.
The why portion of it is because there's gonna be a point in time when Ted is gonna retire. Now, that's kind of a
Yep.
sensitive subject to talk about, I get that, but I mean, it's gonna happen. And then who's gonna replace him?
Me, I'm fully qualified for that plan.
Okay, well, when I did the walkthrough last May or June with, pardon?
You never asked
I never asked what, Nate?
qualifications.
Nate,
I guess you have
if you're
to come
going
up
to
to
talk,
the-
you have to come to the microphone.
Okay, well, at the time of the walkthrough, Ted made the statement that there is nobody working at the sewer plant that is qualified to take it over. That was made. You want to come up? I do. Come on up.
For the record.
Name, please.
My name is Troy Bauk, and I am the staff representative from AFSCME Council 65 that's assigned to represent the contract between AFSCME and the city of Cross Lake. I'm not a resident of Cross Lake. I live in Itasca County, but I've been doing this work for a very long time, and I'm familiar with the processes. And why I would like to speak to you is that this entire process has been something I've not seen in my career. I think that the comment made that there's a process for doing these things is correct, that normally there's a conversation with the city council about the desire or need, the benefits and the costs of doing privatization or outsourcing or changing operations. And in this particular case, what's upsetting is that I received a phone call on May 13th in the early morning hours from your wastewater operators, and they had been told the previous day by their supervisor, Ted, that the mayor was coming through to do a tour of the wastewater plant with some friends. And they were happy to show the mayor the operations and describe what they did and show him how it worked. However, on the morning of the 13th, they were notified by Ted that in fact it wasn't some friends of the mayor's, of Dave's, it was actually People Services, it was a vendor. And the purpose of the tour was to assess the operations and bid for operation of that plant. So my immediate concern was two parts. I don't normally get caught flat-footed in my career where I have no knowledge or understanding. I keep track of the council minutes. I keep track of what's going on in my work units, my public entities. And what I learned was that I went back through the minutes that morning. There was no record of any conversation. And why the deception about what was happening? Why wasn't the information just openly shared that yes, tomorrow People Services is coming through to do a walk through the plant and to potentially bid for it? Those things raised red flags for me. So I placed a phone call to your city administrator because I wanted to verify that I didn't miss something. City administrator knew nothing of any of this. Those raised bigger red flags. There's a process in government, open and transparent government, that has evolved over the course of hundreds of years in this country because in the past there have been many instances that we can talk about in the site of corruption and graft regarding public services. So how did this happen? I began to ask more questions than any of us could answer. I didn't understand how this came to be. I didn't understand how one councilman could independently make a decision to reach out to a private vendor for operation of a multi-million-dollar, tens of millions of dollar plant and do a request for proposal. So after that process, I called the Cross Lake City labor attorney. And my concern is that we're talking about the livelihoods of the city employees of Cross Lake that have based their careers and made their family decisions on their employment with the city of Cross Lake. And certainly it's in jeopardy at this point. That's what my belief is.
Well, Troy, I don't think it is at all.
But why not? So my question to that is, if that is true, then why wouldn't this council, why wasn't this topic, I understand that this topic was brought to the Water Commission many, many months or maybe even years ago. And this topic was discussed and it was decided that that was not the path that Cross Lake wanted to take. That was the decision of that commission. The conversation happens here with the lights on, the cameras rolling, and the community invited. And maybe there are purposeful and meaningful reasons for having that conversation. Maybe there are cost savings. Maybe there are efficiencies that can be realized in that conversation. I'm not afraid of that conversation. But the process is, I'm very concerned about why the deliberate attempt to not include this council. And ultimately, what happened is I was given second-hand information from the attorney that, in fact, the mayor had stated that the concern was succession planning, that there may be an employee that may or may not be retiring. I don't think that's anybody's business when somebody retires. That's a personal decision. But in succession planning, there was a fear that the city of Cross Lake would be left without a plan. Well, I've known the employees that I represent for years, and I know their licenses, I know their capabilities, and I know that you have a city employee that's been here for years, that holds the adequate and needed licenses, and how could the city not know that? I confronted the city administrator over that. He knows that he has a person in employment with the necessary license. I know that in the absence of the supervisor, he fills in that capacity frequently. So how does this get to where we're at? No, this gets worse. Not finding any answers, I resort to data practices law, which is what I have to resort to find out information that's not forthcoming. And what I find out in that email exchange that I received from you, Mayor Nevin, is that, in fact, after the tour of the plant, there was a supper and adult beverages shared and some banter, and that is the epitome of Chicago politics to me. That is not how public services are operated, nor how bids are received. We operate in the daylight with transparency when everybody in this city and this council knows what's happening and why. So the next morning, the email comes back from People Service. Thanks for those, for the evening. I'll get your proposal as soon as possible. I didn't know that a proposal existed. I have the proposal. It's dated June 2021. I have a follow-up email between you and People Services, and what's concerning to me, and these are red flags in the world that I live in.
Yeah.
When I see officials using private email rather than their public email, when I see exclusion of certain councilmen, of certain city officials, when I see communication with individual council members but not the entire council member, there's a purpose for doing those things. And I asked the question then, and I ask it again now. I don't know what the relationship is between the mayor and People Service. I don't know what the intent of entertaining their tour of the plant and requesting their proposal. I've tried to cost this thing. I can't come anywhere near the figures that they're proposing to operate that plant. This would more than double and inflate the cost of the city of Cross Lake. These things in these conversations should have happened here with you all before it ever got to the fact that an individual councilman went out and solicited a proposal from an individual company. I suggest to you that if this is the path that the council wants to take, you follow the RFP process, that there be cost-benefit analysis done. There's no cost savings in this. More so, looking at the dollar signs proposed, I would be a fool not to submit my own bid and hire one of your current public works employees and split the profits with them. And this is becoming a pattern, and I want the council to know, the full council to know that I don't enjoy this. I don't enjoy being at this podium. I don't enjoy bringing forth this information. But I do believe in open and transparent government, and I do believe in abiding by laws. So that's how we got here. That's why the employees are here. And I want to suggest to you that there's a labor shortage in this country right now like never before. That you should be grateful to have the employees that you have for this city, that they're dedicated to this city and they want to make this their career and their lifetime home. And those employees living underneath the cloud and suspicion of the termination of their employment or the outsourcing of their jobs on a daily basis and scrutiny, undue scrutiny by this council or the certain members of this council, leads to a sense of being devalued, being undervalued, being dismissed, and they're not going to be replaced. I can tell you that as an example, the wastewater license that one of your employees holds has a very high commodity and value to every community in Minnesota. I frequently take phone calls from municipalities and cities much like yours, and I'm asked if I know of any other public employee that city or municipality may be able to snag from another public employee because they need the license. And you have that here. So there's two parts. I'll finish with this. One is if you can explain to me why you would operate in this fashion, I think that would benefit us all. What would be the purpose of doing this in the cover of darkness? And secondly is fundamentally, what's the end goal? It's not to save the city of Cross Lake money or the community members reduce their rates. There's no savings in this. There never has been. What is the purpose if it's not to destroy the morale of the workers that work
Okay.
for City of Cross Lake.
Don't sit down, Troy. Let's answer some of this stuff. First of all, the end game is not to get rid of any employees. The end game is to free up the public works employees so that they could do other things in the city, you know, that I think. And can I get Ted just to get into this dialogue a little bit?
Certainly.
Because Ted, you know, how often do I call up and say, when are you gonna shoulder the roads, or when are you gonna do this? And Ted's comment is always, it's on the list, we don't have time to do it. So, I mean, that's part of that. It's not, certainly not to get rid of anything, it's to get things available so we can do more. Is that not true?
That's what I've said to you is the truth. We don't have the time to get
Yeah.
everything done. We have asked you for more staff. That's what we've asked for. But we keep getting turned down for more staff.
Right. Right. I mean, I get that. And from my perspective, I want to minimize the additional staff, just because in the winter, there's not much to do. I mean, you know, we gotta,
And I'm
Right
wondering,
through the
I'd like to
summer.
make one more comment.
Okay.
I said Nate is qualified for his licenses to run the plant when you were there with those people from People Services. He has some things to grow on as far as his management. That's what I said. I did not say he did not have licenses. I told everybody at that meeting or that day that he had the license to run this plant. He just needed to grow in his other abilities. And he is growing and getting better and better
Okay,
at what
well,
he's doing.
if that's true, it was a misunderstanding. I took that as there is not anybody here that's capable of taking over.
And I
totally agree with you, Troy. Through that conversation, a licensed sewer plant guy is very valued. No question about it.
And the other thing that I did say is we are in the process of our other staff to getting them licenses also. They both have their entry levels licensing and are working towards more licensing because it makes them better employees for the city.
Okay, so through this conversation is what is the end game? Is the end game of that the city of Cross Lake to have 3 licensed sewer operators? Is that in the best interest of the city?
The goal was that everybody, by having the license, was accountable for their actions when they operated the plant.
Okay. What my end game is to try to free some of these guys up so we're doing some of the other public, we've got time available. So that's, if there's an end game, that's what mine is.
I didn't receive that.
I didn't either.
I didn't receive the email.
Contract.
Everybody said they
Well,
got one from Troy. That's you,
Yep, they
right?
originated with Dave and you, Marcia. The information that was shared was already shared between the two of you, so I didn't feel it necessary to resend it to you.
That was a year ago, and I just looked at it because the city council would have to review or decide if they even wanted the presentation.
I was not under the
So-
understanding that was a signable contract. I thought that was just a generic proposal to bring to the council to
Here
discuss.
you're eliminating council members with your email, so that's over a year ago, and I think I deleted it after they said they weren't gonna, I think it was at a council meeting and we decided not to do anything with People's Service.
I don't, you spoke earlier today about the necessity to make public information public. You just spoke about it less than a half an hour ago.
I just said that the applications are, once they're final,
But
they're public.
transparency, and I support that 100%. The problem that I have is that you just stated those words, yet I have an email between the two of you from last summer where you didn't comply with that same belief then. And so my intent is, something's not right here. That's all I'm going to say.
I'll have to say that I said, ask Ted about it, get Ted involved.
The conversation that we're having here now should have been had a year ago with the council.
But it died because the council said they didn't want to listen to People's Service.
so-
I think,
So
if I recall right.
So that an independently individual councilman can disregard that will of the council and go out and act independent of it,
No, that was after the fact, I think.
which
I
is
think,
back
I
to
don't know, I don't know dates, and I'm not prepared for this whole thing, but the city council was asked if they wanted to have a presentation from People's Service, and it was shot down.
Yes.
And I thought it was over. It's over
So if it was shot down, why are we talking about it again today?
at the end of the day.
Why are we talking about it again today? If it
I don't
was-
know, why are we?
How did this make it to the
Oh.
agenda? Can I ask that question?
I
How-
requested it,
But why?
Okay.
because I don't think we've ever had a conversation about it. And this honestly is a good conversation to have right now. I appreciate it, believe it or not.
I think the conversation would be much more meaningful if it was in the normal scope and business of the council. All the consternation and frustration, and quite frankly, I've seen employees pursue other employment that were much less compromised than these employees are here today. The fact that they're still here and they're still committed to the city and seeing this process through. What's frustrating for me is normally a council has this conversation. They know the qualifications of their staff. There is contingency planning in the case of succession for all positions. It's normal and customary in public service. None of this is unique or special in any way that I can understand. But the problem is that there's a deliberate, in my opinion, a deliberate attempt to conceal the purposes and intentions rather than be transparent and have a conversation. It's democracy. We may not like the decision of some individuals or some governing bodies, but we live by them because that's our country and this is democracy. We don't subvert them by saying, well, I don't like what the council decided to do, so I'm going to go do this instead. That's not how this country is founded.
Troy, can I interrupt you and just go back a little bit? It just kind of dawned on me why this came up again. And it goes back to the next thing on the agenda is the Public Works building. That's kind of, are you familiar with that?
Well, I'm minimally familiar with it, which is moving into that topic, which is, again, I think the conversation would have been had prior to it being on an agenda and another question I asked, I have to be back here Monday for the regular council meeting. I'm here on a Thursday for a special meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm not understanding, looking at the agenda, what was so pertinent and important, but moving on to your question, have the council members been informed and advised and had an open and transparent conversation about, do you want to pursue this agenda item?
How can we do that without having it at a meeting? And that is the reason for it at this meeting. Because I can only talk to one without talking to the body.
But you can share information, right? You can share information through email with the council body?
No, I can't.
You can't. You can say, I'm considering having a discussion about proposing moving Public Works to the Parks Department?
Absolutely not. I mean, am I wrong? I can't communicate with the whole council
I think it could have all been,
outside of an open meeting, and that's why we're here talking about it.
the whole thing is if People's Service would have came, made a presentation, nobody was saying they're going to get rid of employees, and I didn't see any harm in listening to them. We probably would have shot it down too. I don't know. No one ever found out what they actually were, because we're proposing and couldn't question them on proposing because it never came forth. And just to close your eyes to not listening to a proposal, even you do that all the time, and then you go, no, you're not interested. The council denies it. But no one ever allowed or approved People's Service coming and discussing what they offer.
Which is normally how the process starts, not finishes.
Yeah, but they never, ever, it was shot down. No one wanted to listen.
No, it wasn't.
It was a dead issue, so I don't.
Marcia, if I might interrupt, this was never on an agenda. And why would you, if it was on an agenda, why would you bring somebody through the sewer plant before it was discussed with anybody?
For information.
You're not making any sense. All we need to do is that if we keep putting our foot in the gutter on this stuff, if you want to talk about stuff, you need to just bring it to the council, put it on the agenda and talk about it. We've just ruined our employee relations here.
That's what I'm trying to do today.
Ruin the
And
employee
maybe it's late.
relations?
It's late, but
I'm going to add before I step away from this microphone, You know, the earlier topic about the hiring process, I'm very familiar with the hiring process, and Cross Lake is completely compliant with everything I know to be normal and customary in the standards of the state. I just would like to share with the entire council for your benefit that there is a labor shortage out there, and that I am experiencing calls from most of the employers, the 32 that I deal with, from counties to school districts to private sector, that the longer the hiring process takes, the more applicants they're losing because these folks are in demand out there. So delaying, even going to an interview process and not making a job offer within an immediate amount of time, it's common right now for employers to call to make that job offer and for that candidate to say, I've already been offered a different position I interviewed for last week in a different city. And it's robbing Peter to pay Paul out there right now. So moving forward as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible and following the process is important to get the staff up to where it needs to be and get the resources that you need to be able to function and provide the community members the services that they expect from the city. Any questions for me?
No, Troy, I wish that we could have these dialogues. You know, my frustration is because I can't talk to the council. I can talk to one council person, and that is made very clear to me. So I can't throw this out without a public meeting. That is the intent of this public meeting, is to talk about it. The urgency, or what rekindled it, is the Public Works building and the county having a desire to expand and get out of it. So there needs to be a conversation about the big picture. It's a frustration of mine because I can't have that conversation.
I suggest to you, Dave, and this is just me, from where I come from, that the conversation between the city administrator and the mayor is daily, and it's open. And if there are questions and answers and information that needs to be shared or discussed or thoughts and ideas, that's what I call brainstorming. That's the most efficient use of all of our time. And I would encourage you to build that relationship and have that open communication, because I think we could avoid all of this. I think that that's where it starts, for me.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks much for coming.
Dave, I'd like to make a motion that we in this discussion of hiring or even discussing anything with PeopleSoft in this story.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion second. Any other discussion?
Can I have a little, can I have a little discussion? I just encourage Dave, if you have anything you want to talk about it, do not feel like you have to talk via email or phone call. Put it on the agenda for any council meeting. And that's you know what Troy's saying. We need to talk about it there. And the second thing is, it's not that we don't like what you're proposing, but if you want to get, you have to have more reasons why you want to do this rather than just throw a proposal out there, because this makes no sense to us. At least now we're talking about it. If you want to hire a guy to help out with their stuff, well, that's a whole lot less money than $280,000. And just, you know, bring it up at the council meeting. That's what we're here for. That's what Troy's saying, is being open and talk about it and hash it out. And that's kind of what we're doing now to what you said. So,
Okay,
that's just bring it up. Don't
I need to say
hold it in.
people
Don't
services.
try to be the Lone Ranger on this stuff.
I need to say people services, not PeopleSoft, my error.
yep.
But
Well,
I think we should
anyway,
end the discussions.
Dave, I've never been criticized for not saying what's on my mind, so I try to speak what's on my mind. And I put my foot in my mouth all the time, and I will continue to do that. But an example is earlier this summer when you and I were going to get together and have coffee and talk about this. And then we invited Mike and Ted to get into it, and we were going to have coffee. I think you probably got a phone call that day, Troy, I believe, because that meeting was abruptly halted, and I was in trouble with the union is what, I don't know if it was Jessica, somebody. I mean, you were ticked off about it. But then it died, and that's 6 months ago. No opportunity to talk about it again. So, you know, unfortunately, maybe I should have your number. Maybe I should talk to you, and you know, I take your counsel to heart. I mean, you know, it's...
We have a motion on the floor with a second.
Okay, a motion to drop all people services negotiations, I guess, or whatever that, do you want to read that motion, Char?
To end all people service discussions.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Nope, I'll do a roll call.
Okay, roll call.
Nevin,
Yes.
Herzog,
Yes.
Schrupp,
Yes?
Andrews,
Yes.
Siebert Bowles.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, now, I guess as I said yes to that, so that's drop all discussion to the end of time? Or until it's brought up legitimately again or something? I don't know, but the motion's made, passed.
Probably this council.
Yeah, okay.
You can't handicap, future councils.
But
Saying you can never talk
my
about
closing statement on this whole subject is I am just looking out for ideas for the city. I'm not looking to fire anybody. I know that people service specifically is not a union shop. That's a problem. I get that. But we've got plenty of work for these 3 or 4 guys. Nobody's going anywhere. Hire one more? Well, that will probably come up in discussion, but, let's see. Seth, I mean, if we're gonna have a conversation about that for 6 months or so a year, we definitely need one more, but then we carry over the 3 months, so how do we deal with that, But, that's a conversation to be had, to be made. But so anyway, there was I know that I can't do anything myself. All I'm trying to do is gather and bring information to the council to make a decision. It's very clear that I went out of bounds doing that, and for that I apologize. I don't mean to make anybody think your job's in jeopardy, because there are no jobs in jeopardy. We need you guys, But it's just looking to the future. Same with the next thing on the agenda that we should just drop is the Public Works Building. Again, that's looking for the next 20 years or something. Sometime we'll have a conversation. If you guys want to have a little conversation about that now, I'd love to, but I don't want to offend or step on anybody's toes about it.
Can we bend it a little bit to not just be Public Works?
Well, it actually was a combination of, but let me just finish here, it's very frustrating to be up here and not be able to talk about options for the city in the future, without doing it at an open meeting. You can't go to the coffee shop and discuss it. Unfortunately, our administrator and myself don't have a very good, we don't get along real good. We don't communicate well. I wish that could change, and maybe we should both try to work on that and see if it can. But because he should be the nucleus to all this, and that would start.
Mr. Nevin, I did suggest when we spoke earlier on this, that you do have a lot of good ideas, and the way to get those through is to involve others by looking forward and saying, what's the reason for this? What's your timeline? What are the drivers for recommending change and related consequences? What do the commissions think? To get these ideas, I didn't see the need for a special meeting to discuss 2 of the 3 topics on here, and I did suggest to you that that's a great idea. Let's look at efficiencies, let's look at other things. And I have reached out to you and suggested that let's put them on the agenda and let's talk about them. And I have suggested to you multiple times with things like people service and other opportunities. When you have these ideas, let's get them in front of the council. Let's talk about why we should do this or why we shouldn't and have a thoughtful discussion on it. And that's where it's ended.
Well, okay.
And that's not me.
Well, equally, Mike, as many times as you've reached out that way, you've reached out through some kind of legal process to me too. That's, I can't talk to the Public Works employees now because they're gonna get the union. I just can't do it. I don't feel like I can talk to any of you guys.
Dave, you need to kind of stop and let go a little bit. We need to move on to item 4.
Okay. Enough said. I hope you guys get the gist of what I said. Item 4 is discuss moving Public Works. I would just kind of say that we should just let that die right now, but if somebody wants to discuss it, I'd love to.
I think.
I agree.
Well, I think
I
council
agree.
needs to be made aware, not necessarily today, but they need to be made aware of how much that property is, who owns it, and start gathering some thoughts from staff as to how that property could most effectively be used by the city. Okay?
In 2023, the county is going to do something for a facility, whether they move off-site and build a new one, or maybe we should add on to it down there and accommodate them. Something's gonna happen, and that's only a year away, so the time to start talking about it is now.
You know, I agree with that, but let's get staff involved, working with us for it, okay?
Okay.
So can I chime in? I agree with what Aaron's saying. My concern that we all should have is what is the county doing? And who on our end is going to take and gather the information that we need to understand with the county? Does that mean we have to have a joint meeting with the county? Is somebody attending the county discussions on this? Because, you know, I don't even know exactly when the contract's up. I wish we could just get something going as a ongoing thing that's on the council agenda that addresses this each month, that we talk, that, you know, the county hasn't decided, the county's doing this. But we need to talk to the county and tell them, or we need to discuss this ourselves. I'm not really in favor of buying the county out.
We're not buying, we own the
We got
building.
the sewer plant there.
Dave, we own the building.
I know, but right, but I don't want the dog, the tail wagging the dog here, if you get my perspective. So we need to be on top of them, and that, we just need to have somebody be the point man on this, so.
So the purpose for this on
let's
the
discuss
agenda
that.
is to try to have a discussion to get something started, you know, and clumsily as I might be. I mean, that's what we need to do, because a year goes by real quick, as we all know.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sure.
But
Go ahead, Mr. Schrupp.
so we're not talking about moving, we're just talking about our site and what the county's doing and moving forward with that.
I think it's more, what purpose would
That's
we
what-
have for it, Dave? What purpose would we have for that
Oh, you're talking
property?
about
I'm talking wide open.
I don't
What
think we
property?
should restrict the conversation, throw stuff on the table, see what sticks, you know?
You know, we've talked about at
oh,
one
for
point.
moving, you mean?
Well, yeah, whatever.
No, I'm not talking about
Or
that.
whatever.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Please.
I've had conversations with the county, and the last that I know the county, they sat down as a group themselves and were identifying what they need. And that's the last this past fall. Excuse me, that's the last this fall that they had meetings they'd had. As far as I know, they've had no other conversation on what and where and when, what they want to do. Yes, in 2023, we will be paying off the bonds. We have 2 more payments of about $212,000 apiece on that building, which the county pays 53% of that bond. We pay the rest, the 47%. So in 2023, after that, we won't have any more bond payments. Now, if we want to make some changes or improvements, do we take the 200,000 that we're each putting into it, or 100,000 each putting into it? Do we make the improvements with that? Yes, we have some needs down there. We have some space needs. I have things that I have identified, but have not had the chance to go over with anybody yet. So the county, the city, yes, we need to sit down and we need to pursue what both of our needs and where we should go for this in the future.
Well, I've asked several times about where the county is at. I don't think the county can come in here next fall and say, well, we've decided this, and not give us any opportunity to make a determination on where we're going. We need to know where they're going in order to know where we're going.
Yeah,
Let's just authorize the staff, Mike and Ted, to immediately start the ball rolling on staying in lockstep with what the county's doing. And what are, and we should give them our choice on what we'd like to do. And I would like us to stay there. I don't even know who owns the building, if it's us or them, or are they leasing? But I don't think it's appropriate for us to move that facility.
The way the lease works is the
We don't
building
have
was-
enough money.
The way the lease works, it was constructed by the EDA, so it's actually owned by the EDA, which is the city. The city EDA owns the land and the building, and we lease 53% of the building to the county. Now, if the terms of the lease state something to the effect that if the city wants to buy out the county and have the building entirely be a city building, the building would be appraised and we would pay the county 53% of the appraisal. If the county wants to buy the building from the city, we'd have the building and the land appraised, and the county would pay for the land and 47% of the building. Now, those are big numbers based on how buildings are valued now. And that's all what's being considered, and right now, the county hasn't determined or come forth to us on what their plans are. I think everyone had a little bit of sticker shock when they looked at what it cost to put up a building. When you start thinking about things like, well, if we want to relocate that building, we have to, first off, where would you put it? Would you put it at the northernmost facility owned by the city, or do you want it more centrally located? That's one question. Do you want to keep it in more of an industrial type zone because you've got a fuel site there, you've got a water plant there, you've got a water system there that's used by the city for fire and parks and public service? You'd have to recreate that somewhere. Where does the current infrastructure exist to handle the type of vehicles that utilize that facility? So there's a lot of those things to think about. There's a lot of good reasons to stay. There may be a lot of good reasons to relocate it. All of them cost money. Those are all things that we're working through with the county. We had one preliminary meeting with them, and they looked at putting up a new building at one point. They also looked at what would happen if we expanded the existing building. You know, for example, we share a salt and sand facility, and we work together on that. And how does that relationship work? That's all what's being talked about.
Well, the city council can't make a decision unless we have the facts. And I guess if Ted would put together and share with the city council what his needs are and what he thinks. I mean, you are the guy that can tell us if we can stay in that building, if we need a bigger building, or if the county should take it all over and, you know, build another facility. We're kind of counting on you, so I guess the quicker you can do that so that the discussion can commence with the city, with the county, would be beneficial.
A while back, we did a 5 and 10-year plan where we're going to be in those two stages. And it was identified in those that we needed more space.
But I'm sorry, I don't have it. So in order for the city council to make a decision, we have to have those facts sitting in front of us, and you have to update them. You know, you've gotten different equipment. Is all your equipment going to utilize the current building if the county decides to move out? And I'm not saying the county's moving out. Holy. I'm just saying, you know, we have to, in order to make a decision, and we can't just wait till next fall. I think the fire's got to be lit under the county and say, you know, we have to figure out what we're going to do, and we need to know what your plans are.
And I will follow through with them again and ask them where they're at with their space needs from them. Because that was when I identified with the council last fall, this past October or whatever it was, we were waiting for them. We have not received anything from them. I will ask again to please follow through with us so we know where you're at.
Because I can't say we should do this because I don't know.
Yeah.
And until I have the facts, I'm not going to say that. So I think that we need to
So to help
move
this along,
forward.
let's just make it a motion that Ted could share with the county that we want to know what this is. Let's go ahead and make a motion. That's the marching order. No, nobody misunderstands that.
So
I'll second
We
that.
want to know the status of what's going on with the county and what our needs are.
Okay, that's your
a
motion?
Can you
At the
restate your
Public Works
motion?
Site.
Is that your motion, Dave? Directing staff to talk to the county about what their status is and put a timeline on it so that we can plan.
I want staff here to tell us what they need too. So if you could restate your motion, Dave, that would be wonderful.
I think they're potentially two different motions. I think we certainly need to get updated from Ted and Mike on what City of Cross Lake needs. And we need updates and to be kept abreast of what the county is thinking. And I think we ought to also put it on the February agenda for starters for our February council meeting.
Okay, I don't believe I heard anything about contacting the county to find out where they're at.
No, I did say that.
Oh,
Got
did
to
you?
talk with the
Okay.
county and what their needs are, because we can't do that without them.
So are you making a motion, John?
Yes.
Is that what you're doing? Could you state your motion, please, so I understand what you're moving on?
Sure, that Ted Strand, Mike Linus, have discussions with the county as to what their needs are, that Ted and Mike also present to the Cross Lake City Council what the needs are for the city of Cross Lake, and that the city council be kept abreast of both of those topics, and that we start by putting it on the February city council agenda.
I will second that.
Okay, motion and second. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Chair.
Aaron Herzog,
Yes.
John Andrews,
Yes?
Marcia Siebert-Vols.
Yes.
Dave Nevin.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We lost Mr. Schrupp. Okay, Mike, I do want to backpedal a little bit and have you clarify a statement. You said that the county pays 53% and the city pays 47% of the mortgage.
That's correct.
And if we were going to transfer the title either direction, that the county would pay we would pay the county 53%, but we own the property, right? And we've only got 2 payments left.
Correct.
So there would be appraisal of the property done, an adjustment for the 2 payments that are remaining to pay off, and then the county would pay the city for the remainder of it, whatever the value comes out to be.
Right.
Okay, I mean, you just kind of,
Yeah, the city owns the land, the EDA owns the land, and the building costs are 5347.
right, but I
That's how it'd be
mean,
split.
the EDA owns the building too, right?
It-
And the county is just leasing it?
They're the tenant, correct.
Is the contract with the EDA, because maybe the EDA has something to say about it?
Well, the point is, we've got an asset there, you know, we've
Yeah,
got something.
but I'm just
that's worth
saying
something.
that,
The way that.
we'll
that
have the
worked,
EDA
Marcia-
in here all upset.
No, they're not going to be upset. It was a financing mechanism used at that time to issue bonds for a specific type of facility. Many local governments did that to build fire halls, public works facilities, waterworks. It was financed through an EDA to avoid some of the controversy or the process to go through issuing bonding. EDAs were allowed to issue lease revenue bonds at that time. Many, many cities, as you're aware,
Yeah.
did that. And it was a financing technique.
Yeah, that the EDA could do, so.
But just in closing on this, the city has got a real asset down there with that public works utility building and grounds. It's got a fuel port, it's got salt containers, it's got all that stuff. But it's got a value. The county had looked at spending, they had a price of $14 million to build a new facility someplace else. It's over, they're not gonna do it. So now they're trying to rekindle and we're gonna try to figure out where they're at.
Yes.
But the city does own an asset down there. The reason that the kind of moving public works in my world came to order is because TJ is also needing an expansion. He needs some room. And that's where I brought up maybe we could do a joint facility there and separate the two and, you know, but I mean, that's where that came from. Right, wrong, or in between, that's where it came from, so. I don't know if we want to totally disregard all those conversations, but I think the city should know that they, just like we used to have the phone company, they've got a building down there that has got a value to it. It's worth something. So, that's it.
I mean, Mr. Mayor, I can tell you that at one time, the city looked at all of the assets and looked at space needs, and we have a space needs study that Winsmith did done a while back that identified some of these things also, that we had needs, so.
Yeah. So
And we can bring that forward too.
You could just update that or something, yeah.
But your equipment has changed since that study, I'm sure, huh?
It's basically the same equipment.
Oh, okay.
It's the same number of pickups, same number of snowplows, same number of staff.
All right.
So,
Did you ever
Thank you
get
for
that
sharing.
patching machine for the
yes,
blacktop?
this spring it'll be being used quite a bit. With this freeze thaw the way it is, it's gonna be a bad year for potholes.
When did we receive shipment on that?
We got it this, late this summer.
Okay, I haven't seen it yet. but-
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything? You know, you Public Works guys, you know, obviously I've offended you, and I apologize for that. The intent is not there. My intent is just to throw stuff on the table, hash it out, and see where we end up. I apologize for causing that. Go ahead.
You stated that I do need more space, and, you know, Mike and Ted have now been motioned to go and pursue ideas for that facility. Well, I need space needs as well. Do you want to add me on that discussion so we can both, or all three, talk about it? in the
Absolutely.
same meeting?
I would, yeah.
Okay.
Aaron, are you in agreement with that? Yeah, and Marcia?
Yes, yes, I agree.
We need to agree on stuff so that it gets done.
Well, I think we have to have some facts in front of us instead of trying to make a decision and not really knowing the needs. And if we know the needs and the big picture, we'd be better off.
And there is an urgency in time. Mr. Wessel, I'd love to hear from you, but you got to come up.
Okay, if it pertains.
If it pertains to this discussion.
Mark Wessels, Chair of Planning and Zoning Commission, but I now live in Crosby. But I wanted to mention something, and something that the union rep here kept hammering on you about is going out and getting information from other sources and things like that without bringing it to the council. I'd like to remind this council of what happened back in 2011, 2012. We kept talking about efficiencies within the Planning and Zoning Department and the lack thereof in Cross Lake. And so a council member and myself and a few other people went out and approached the county on our own, no council approval, none was needed. And we got a bunch of information from the county and asked, number one question, would the county be interested in helping us? And they were. That's how that started. Then we came back, after I became a council member, we came back and set up a committee with 2 council members to go with, at that time, I think, Mike, you were involved, as far as going to the county and getting some more detail on what could this look like. And we had a number of meetings with council approval at that time to go there. But I want to back up for a minute. Before I got on the council, we had asked a few times, should we get the county involved? Should we get the county involved? And the county kept saying, with no information whatsoever, and finally there was a motion made to drop the county option. We had talked to the county and tried to get them involved. Could you help us up in our county? But the council didn't want to hear it. They didn't have any information to say no to it about, but they didn't want to hear it. And so that's what you're faced with here. Going out and getting information is never, ever, ever a bad idea. As long as it's done with, and one council member can do that. You don't need the approval of the other 4 to ask somebody else, could you help us? And get information, bring the information to the council and say, you guys interested in exploring this further? You can't make a decision, you can't hire anybody, but to get information, anyone, you can go out and get information. As long as it's done that legal way, and that's the only way things happen. And by the way, that change from the council that want to drop the county option, we're just done with it, having no information in front of them to make that decision, to where we went to today. We went from a 70% approval rating to a 99.7 or 8% approval rating in our planning and zoning department. We initially saved $100,000 the first year, and then other things happened, costs went up, and everybody said, well, you're not saving any money anymore. So yeah, you're comparing it to 2010 dollars, not to 2015 dollars. And so all those things happened, and that information starts from getting some information, talking to people. I get people approaching me all the time, would you like to come to work for my company? Back here, no, I don't, but I'm gonna come listen to you anyway, because I might get some ideas for how to do my business better. It's never a bad idea to go get information from other people, and to get attacked from a union representative for trying to better the city disappoints me greatly. We have a pretty good planning and zoning, or I mean, public works department here. We do. Everybody knows we have a pretty good public works department here. But to go out and explore other ideas shouldn't make anyone offended, is exploring other ideas. This one didn't turn out to be the greatest idea in the world, but you didn't know that until you found out, until you asked a bunch of questions.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Troy, come on up.
I'm not looking to get into a debate about any of this. I'd just like to state in response to that seeking information from a government entity is fine and good in my world. People should do that. We're talking about apples and oranges here. The presentation that I made, the things that I spoke to earlier were about the facts of a no-bid contract of a public service with a private company. I don't see those as apples to apples, and I don't like them characterized as that because they're not the same or similar. I wasn't here. Didn't participate in the instance that he was referring to, but getting information from a government entity is always a good idea. I do it all the time. But the laws don't apply to requests for information from government entities. They do apply when you talk about private contracts and vendors, so you have open and fair competition for service. That's where the law comes from. So that's all.
Troy, thanks for coming. I do appreciate, truly. Okay, we done?
Move to adjourn.
Second,
All in favor? Oh, Shar, you gotta do that.
who wants to stay?
Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes.